laying the groundwork, it can be done. And now, what I think would be grand would be that we hear from Marketa Smrckova from Mendelu, who's really actually working on how do we expand this across Zambia. So, Marketa, I'd like to give you the floor and invite you to keep to time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm happy that I'm following up on Rolf. As we both work in Zambia, we both work and we both work together on some projects and some areas. And he very nicely presented the rangeland part, the pastures, and the rehabilitation of the joint and the environment in general. Our approach is a little bit more community-based and more focused on the let's say the sustainable value chain, as Fiona mentioned as one of the points. So I believe that my presentation will follow up on Rolf's and really bring a little bit of other points to connect. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Marketa Smrckova. I'm working for Mendel University. It's a Czech university, but we are working in Zambia for last 10 years. As you can see, the topics are quite... Oh, okay. That was a noise from James. The topics are very visible here on the slide: natural resource management, rehabilitation of soil and its management, livestock production, and many others. That's why I really am happy that I can share a few of our thoughts. Maybe next slide. Yes, our activities in Zambia are very diverse. As a university, we prone to do a lot of research work around the country, but also we work and implement directly the development projects. And today I will talk about the holistic grazing activities that we are doing. I think that we can, yes?
Sorry, Marketa, Pier Andrea here, just checking that the interpretation is okay. Yeah, perfect. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. I think we can go to the next slide so we get really to the topic properly. Thank you. So this is just a very brief some data, some information on what we are doing. So we are practicing with our farmers and the communities the holistic management since 2015. We are currently supporting 24 communities in 2 provinces, southern and western, all together in 6 districts. As we are working with them, our support, of course, is methodological, technical, and a little bit of material with the overnight crawling. A little bit about the communities, how they look like in our activities. There is the start is usually between 10 to 15 farmers. Now, right now they are growing, but that's usually how we are starting in the communities. Some of the communities, or most of the communities, are contributing to the activities with a lot of their own material, with some tools, wooden poles, etc., for the overnight crawling. So it's very much partnership between the project or the university and the communities themselves. The group of 10-15 farmers, how they are usually starting, usually bring between 70 to 220 cattle. So some of the communities are a little bit smaller. They are practicing holistic management with 70, 90, 80 cattle. Some of the communities are around 220. Of course, at all of the communities, the Holistic Land and Livestock Management Committee is established, who is deciding and of course together with the community, but the committee is basically running and deciding a few things over the program. As Rolf said, our area is very much very much divided and very much distributed according to the traditional leadership. So we are working with several of the chiefs that we are in their areas, and their support is extremely important. But we also work together with governmental officers, because we can't exclude them from these activities. So there is about 30 participating extension or governmental extension officer, either veterinarian or agriculture extension officers, together with us on the ground. Next slide, please. I think that this is very brief, and since we are all here on the same topic, I'm pretty sure that everybody knows the goals of why we are doing what we are doing to increase fertility of the soil, for the crop production, improve the grazing area, for the quality of the pastures, of course, to improve the feed for the animals, so they improve their health and their production, and in general to improve the sustainable environment around us. And last but not least, improving the community cooperation through the holistic approach. Next slide, please. I have prepared two slides very briefly to show some results. And as I said, in these two slides, I'm very much focusing on the production side. So as the communities are implementing holistic grazing, throughout the day, of course, they are grazing the animals together, and throughout the nights, they are bringing them back to the movable crawls, which we have supported. Here you can see a graph of the data that we have collected in Western Province at one of our projects. The data were collected between 2019 and 21. As you can see, the yellowish or orange color is the production of a variety of crops before application of this movable crawl activities, and the green one is after the application. Either it's immediately after, so it's a first year, or it's a second year after. It's overwhelmingly convincing, I would say, that without using any additional fertilizer or either organic or inorganic, the production increased in all of the crops and all of our areas. So as you can see, it's about 40 to 60% even, some of the increase. For us, and especially for the farmers, very positive message, which keeps them going on with the activities by themselves as the communities. Next slide, please. So this slide, especially the table, is showing the results of collected data on maize production. As you can see, the MNK means movable night crawl, which we used, or the community used on their fields. Chemical fertilizer, we collected data on the maize planted with the chemical fertilizers in some communities as well. There is an option for manure, but not the movable night crawl, but only using the manually. And there are also data on no fertilizer and no manure. So basically just the production itself without the fertilization. The methodology was quite, it's a little bit difficult, definitely not for the short time that we have here. I just have highlighted a few points here, how the data were collected. So for you later on, you can go through that. But basically, the data showed that from the weighting of each of the crop of maize, specifically targeted in each field the same way. Then the movable night crawl has the highest highest average weight of 1 cob of maize. And that's the difference, of course, between what we are mostly interested to see is between the using of the holistic approach and movable night crawls, and how does it change, or what is the difference between that properly implemented and to use chemical fertilizers. So you can see that by using movable night crawls, the average of a maize weight was by 1/3 bigger. There are also a lot of variables that could have influenced that. Specifically, I have highlighted one here because the intercropping that some of the farmers did in more percentage appeared when they were also doing a movable night crawl. So that percentage could influence, of course, the size of the maize as well. But as you can see, in all of the type of fertilizers, some intercropping was made by the farmers. So that is there just to compare how much it could influence the weight. Even if we count it properly together with the percentage, we can see that the movable night crawl in this sense again proof to have a bigger production based on the average weight of a cob of maize.
Marketa,
Okay.
we're going to have to draw it to a close.
Yes. Just the last two slides very briefly, if we can move. I believe we are now getting to a few pictures, which you can of course go through that a little bit later. Maybe we can move on to the slide when there are, yes, this one. I think that this one is very interesting. It's one of the, could you go back, please? Could you go back, Pierre, please? One more, please. Can you see? Oh, okay. So this is a picture. No, the picture of the field from the drone, which very nicely show where the movable night crawl was implemented, and how and where it was not. So you can see the right up corner where it was not implemented. There was no movable night crawl, and in most of the other areas, it was implemented. Of course, the greener the better, and as you can see, the greener parts are also around Phaidierbia, the type of tree that really helps with the production. So it really, specifically this picture really shows the benefits of using the livestock and the trees in the field. Very quickly to the challenges and how did we overcome them. Maybe you can skip up here. Yes, lessons learned first. Yes, the previous. Oh, yes, this one. So there is, I've highlighted 4 main challenges and suggestions or experience what we have done to overcome them. Of course, when the community is implementing something, then the traditional leadership needs to be involved very, very, very deeply and in every single step of the way. We were very lucky so far that all of the chiefs and all of the village headmen and many others were supporting it and are part of the activities. Also, there was a challenge of a community ownership. As a project, sometimes the activities tend to be visible as a project ones, not their own. But luckily, we managed together with the governmental extension officer and the traditional leadership to overcome that challenges as well. That the holistic grazing is now seen as a community thing, not as a project thing that done by Mendel or any other organization. Next slide, please. And very last one, I promise. Yes, in some areas of ours, there are also a lot of cultural prejudice, as I believe it's in many countries, many areas. In our areas is mostly mistrust among the members of the communities, and some of the cultural prejudices not to mix the animals and breeds, so they didn't want to bring the animals together to mix them. But of course, with the help of veterinarians from the government and the whole explanation process, we managed to mitigate these issues, And I would say that our communities, they are now very much open to further bringing them together. And the last is definitely community practices on the ground. If there are the communities are vast and they are really big different distances from each other, then there is a difficulties to practice it. So we always recommend, for even for us, for any other community or for the others, let's start with a small, very small group that is next to each other. They can start to practice, and then we can grow. And that, I would say, it's something that we strongly believe in, because it really worked out for us. And for any big project, before the scaling up, we really need to start as in a smaller scale. So with that, I think I will finish. Thank you very much for your time. I hope everybody could hear me. And if you have any questions, please post them in chat, and the presentation will be shared later on. Thank you.